Oklahoma Gardening is a production of the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the land grant mission of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University, dedicated to improving the quality of life of the citizens of Oklahoma through research-based information. Underwriting assistance for our program is provided by the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry, helping to keep Oklahoma green and growing. Today on the Best of Oklahoma Gardening, we're having an herb festival. Host Casey Hentges starts with 5 best herbs to have in your garden. We'll also look at great basil varieties, rosemaries, thymes, cilantros, and mints. Barbara Brown then takes a few choice nips, adds some hemp seeds, and makes a tasty parfait.
Recently, we asked you, our viewers, for your top 5 herbs to grow in the garden, and we're here today with the results that we came up with.
Plant number 1.
You all must enjoy making pesto or caprese salads because your number 1 herb choice to grow is basil. But again, the question was, which one do you prefer growing, not necessarily which you prefer eating. But again, it's no wonder that basil was the winner because basil is such an easy plant to grow in the garden. The nice thing about basil is it's also a great plant to add as a patio or container garden plant. Now, you can easily get it either by transplants or seedling. A lot of time there's a lot more seeds that might be available through the internet for you. Now, the one thing you want to be cautious of is you can save the seeds from year to year if you want to, but if you plant more than one variety within a couple hundred feet, they might cross-pollinate. So you might be getting actually a different basil than what you're expecting to save for the next year. Other than that, basil is a great addition to the garden, and you really only need 1 or 2 plants to feed a family.
Plant number 2.
Your number 2 pick is rosemary, and it's no wonder because it's a nice shrub to add to your herb garden. Now, the thing about rosemary is it is from the Mediterranean, so it likes a little bit more of a drier, sandy soil. So if you have Oklahoma clay soils, you might try planting this in a container where it'll allow it to dry out a little bit in between. It's one that can be sensitive to our winters, but ARP is a cultivar that is actually touted as being more cold tolerant.
Plant number 3.
Most gardeners will agree that you can never have too much thyme in the garden, but in this particular case, we're talking about the plant thyme. And it comes in a couple of different forms, but whichever cultivar of thyme you get, you're going to be adding a nice softness to your garden with its petite foliage that it adds. Because thyme is a perennial, meaning it'll come back the next year, you want to make sure to quit trimming it as you get into the fall so that it's allowed to harden off for the season. Also, thyme is another Mediterranean herb, so it works well in drought conditions, one that you might again add to your patio garden or in a container, or maybe even in a bottle.
Plant number 4.
Cilantro is one of those herbs that I think you either love it or hate it, but apparently you, our viewers, love growing it in the garden. Now, cilantro is a cool season herb, which means as those temperatures start to rise, you're going to see your plant rise also, which is called bolting, as the foliage really starts to sprout up. Now, after you're done harvesting the foliage for cilantro, all is not lost because once these flowers start to bloom and set seed, that is what we know as coriander.
Plant number 5.
Last but certainly not least is the mint plant, and you really don't even have to be a cook to enjoy this plant as it's a nice addition to any summer drink. You also really don't need to be much of a gardener in order to grow this plant. Now, the mint plant comes in an array of colors and textures and smells and fragrances, so you can really customize the look that you're going for or the smell or flavor you're going for in your garden. Mint can be a little bit of a bully, so feel free to harvest as much as you want from this plant. Because it can be a bully in the garden, you might want to use it in a container. If you want that look of growing it in the ground, go ahead and plant it in a container, but then sink that container down into the soil, leaving about a 1-inch lip just to ensure that it doesn't get out into the garden. There you have it. Those are your top 5 herbs to grow in the garden. And while our survey may have limited you to choosing just 5, thankfully you can choose as many as you want to plant in your garden. Basil is another great herb to add to the garden, and whether you have a dedicated herb garden or just a little extra space in your vegetable garden, it's a nice complement to those vegetables as well. Now, as basil is an annual, it will die each year, but it's easy to reseed and sow directly into the garden each spring. The hard part is deciding on which basil to grow. Now, there's a couple of different types you can try. We have a small leaf basil right here that's called a globe basil. And this is only going to form a compact, about 12 to 18-inch round bush. And you can see it's much different than our traditional basils that we might see. This particular one is going to be slow to set seeds, which is nice. If you're looking for another one, there's also called a boxwood basil that also stays compact. And because of their compact habit, these are a nice addition to any small garden. Also, they're great for containers or even add a nice ornamental border. There's another cultivar called cardinal basil, and while this one's not blooming, it's actually been cultivated to showcase those flowers of basil. In fact, sometimes people mistake this for a showy burgundy celosia because of the beautiful flowers that it produces throughout the season. And it too will maintain that sweet, intense flavor of our traditional basils. Here in front of us, we have a more traditional looking basil. This one's called a mazel basil. There's also one called Dulce, which is a 2015 AAS winner. And you can go with more of a citrus flavored basil with lime and lemon basil, or perhaps try a cinnamon basil that has red stems and a pink flower to it. A couple of purple foliage basils that you might want to try are called Purple Ruffles or Round Midnight. Now, regardless of which basil you choose, they really prefer a moderate pH of 6 to 7.5, and they also like a rich, moist soil. With so many different basils to choose from, there's bound to be one that works for you and your palate. Rosemary is a great drought-tolerant herb to add to your garden, and there's a couple of different varieties that you might find readily on the market. There's one called Barbecue, and this particular cultivar produces long, straight stems of rosemary. So what you can do is actually take these stems and strip the leaves off of it and use those as skewers for your shish kebabs. And it adds a little bit of flavor to your meat or vegetables as you're barbecuing, and it's just a nice addition. Now, this particular cultivar is hardy only from zones 8 to 10, so it won't be overwintering for you in the garden. Another one that you might find is called Huntington Carpet. This is a low-growing rosemary, and again, it's only hardy from zones 8 to 10, but what's nice about it is it tends to spill over. So it's a great addition to the edge of your garden or perhaps a container. Now, if you're looking for one that's going to last a little bit longer in the garden, you want to look for a cultivar called ARP, A-R-P. And this cultivar is touted as being one of the most cold hardy rosemaries that you can find. It's said to be hardy from zone 6 to 10, and so you can see it has the nice kind of bluish gray foliage that's traditionally seen in rosemary. It's going to have an upright growth of about 3 feet. So ARP is the one you want to get if you're looking for a perennial rosemary to add to your garden. As I said, rosemary is a great drought-tolerant plant. It can handle the heat in the garden as well as in the kitchen. Thyme is a small but mighty herb, and you can never have too much of it in the garden. Here we've got a couple of different thymes. Most thymes are a small-leafed, low-growing plant, and they are a perennial here in Oklahoma. From zones 4 to 8 is when they're hardy. And here we've got a low-growing creeping thyme, and you can see we've added it to kind of soften the edges of our raised bed. You can also use this in walkways and things like that where it might get crushed by light foot traffic, and add a nice aroma into the garden as you're strolling through. Here we've got a lemon thyme that's a little bit more of an upright thyme. Now the thing about these thymes, a lot of times we think about needing to pinch back our plants in order to prevent them from flowering so we can maintain nice fresh foliage that we want to harvest. Thyme's a little bit different. We don't need to worry so much about it going to flower because the foliage is still going to be good for us to use. The one thing you do want to do is maybe not prune it or pinch it back too much in the fall, as you want to allow it to transition and to winterize a little bit. Any new growth that it does produce in the fall is going to make it more susceptible to those winter frosts that come in. Thyme likes hot, dry conditions, and in fact, one of the biggest problems that you may have with growing it is overwatering it. So you want to make sure not to overwater it. There are some thymes that have a little bit more of a woolly foliage to them, and those can be really susceptible to fungal problems, especially in areas of high humidity. Regardless of whether you plan on utilizing thyme as an herb, it's a great addition to the garden, as it also works well as a spiller in containers, or again, just in nooks and crannies to kind of make a ground cover in your garden. If you're wanting to incorporate thyme into your garden, you might look at purchasing a plant or getting a division from a neighbor, because thyme is really slow to germinate from seed. Cilantro is another great herb to add into your garden. Now cilantro is a little bit different than some of the other herbs that we have because it is a cool season herb, which means as the temperatures start rising, it's going to bolt. But I kind of call it a twofer because not only do you get to harvest the cilantro leaves when the temperatures are mild, once they start to flower, as the temperatures start to warm up and these flowers set seed, then that turns into coriander, which you can also use in your kitchen. Now, as long as the temperatures haven't reached 75 degrees, the soil temperatures haven't reached 75 degrees, then you can continue to succession plant this so you have something to harvest. So you might plant this early in the season and then 2 weeks later plant another plant so that you constantly have a supply of cilantro to harvest. Again, that works until the soil temperatures reach 75 degrees, at which time your plant's going to turn into coriander. When you are growing cilantro, you may find that you have a problem with aphids or whiteflies, and in order to eradicate those, you'll want to use an insecticidal soap since this is a plant that you're going to eat. Now, if you're looking for that cilantro flavor but want it all season long, there's another plant that you can try, and this is called Vietnamese cilantro or Vietnamese coriander. It is not related to our cilantro, but it's going to have a very similar flavor to it. You can see it actually has a much different look to it, and in fact it's in the Persicaria family, or the knotweed family. This particular cilantro, because it's a tropical plant, it's used to moist, warm conditions. And so we're going to plant it. We've already got one in here in our bog garden at the bottom of our herb garden, and we're going to add another one. Now this will form about a 1 foot clump, and as it grows, it's going to continue to want to kind of root itself into the ground around it, which is fine. It's going to be an annual, so it's not going to take off for us. Now in the wintertime, or as we approach winter, if you want to preserve that plant and continue it on, you can actually harvest some of those rooted stems and take them into the house if you would like. The problem is sometimes it's difficult to really provide enough moisture and humidity to grow that plant successfully throughout the wintertime. Another option would be in the springtime, go to visit an Asian market where a lot of times it's sold relatively inexpensive as a fresh bundle of herb. And you can take that bundle of herb, those stems, and root them in a glass of water and then transition them out into your garden. Another warm season alternative to cilantro is something called Mexican coriander. Now this is actually related to our cilantro that we often grow here in our cool months. A Mexican coriander or Mexican cilantro is a little bit different though as far as the texture of the plant. It's going to have a bit of a prickly, kind of serrated edge. So often it's used more in cooking rather than a fresh herb that you might want to add, because the texture of it can be a little bit different on your palate. So if you're one of those people that just can't get enough cilantro and you're looking to extend that season, you might try Vietnamese or Mexican cilantro as well. With over 600 different types of mints, it's no wonder it's so readily used as a flavoring in many of our dishes and drinks. Now, I bet as most gardeners, we've just begun to scratch the surface of what type of mint we grow in the garden. This here is an apple mint, which has the flavor of apple in it. It makes a really nice addition to whether it's ice water or chopped over a fresh salad or even fresh fruit. Now you can see the leaves of the apple mint are a little bit more ruffled and have some hair on them. And so for this reason, sometimes it's called the fuzzy mint or the woolly mint. Another mint that is fruity also and related to the apple mint is the pineapple mint. You can see here it has a very similar rough textured leaf as the apple mint, and that's because it is a cultivar of the apple mint. You can see the pineapple mint has a nice yellow or cream colored variegation to it on the margins of the leaves. And if you do see it reverting back to the true green leaf, you want to go ahead and pinch that out, because what that is doing is it's reverting back to the apple mint. So in order to maintain the true pineapple mint, take out anything that might be pure green leaves like that. Pineapple mint is also a nice addition to any adult drink that you might not have that famous mojito mint to add into. Now, if you're looking for something a little bit sweeter, you might try a cotton candy mint or our delicious chocolate mint for a nice dessert. Now, with so many different mints, you've got to keep in mind that they can be a garden bully. They are a perennial, so they'll come back every year, but they tend to be aggressive, especially in moist soils. So you want to make sure to probably plant them in a container, or plant them in a container, but leave about a 1-inch lip exposed up out of the soil. That way it can look like it's in the garden, but it can control it a little bit better. Also, if you're planting more than one type of mint, make sure to put them at opposite ends of the garden, because they can easily cross-pollinate, and over time you can lose the integrity of the flavor and the aroma. With so many different mints to choose from, it's easy to customize for your garden as well as your cooking. We've got another Oklahoma proven perennial that we want to showcase today. This is Catmint, or this particular cultivar is Walker's Low Catmint. And you can see it forms about a 1 to 2 foot tall clump. It is a very nice mounding perennial that puts on a lovely flush of lavender blue flowers in the springtime. Now, if we trim these back after they flush out, that's the first time we'll continue to get flowers throughout the season. You can see by the abundance of bees on here, they're great pollinator plants as well. This plant does really well in mass, or as you can see here, as a nice border plant. It also works well in a great herb garden or rock garden. It does prefer full sun, but can handle a little bit of shade. Now down in the deep south, it can't handle the hot humidity, so you might see it suffer a little bit. It likes drier conditions, as it prefers drier soil conditions as well. Now this Nepeta, or catmint, is related. It's the same genus as that catmint that might excite your cat, but it is actually a different species. While this isn't the same species that will get your cat excited, it's one that all gardeners should get excited about.
There are a few edible products from hemp, and today we're going to talk about hemp seeds. Now, when you buy hemp seeds, they're going to be kind of creamy and probably some green mixed in with them, and they're going to be pretty expensive. And because they are full fat at this point, there's none of the fat removed when the shell or the hull is removed, they're going to spoil very quickly. So you're going to want to keep them in the refrigerator or freezer, and there they'll keep for you about a year. If you keep them at room temperature, 3-4 months if you're lucky. And if you buy them in this size, this one cost me almost $15, so it's an expensive thing. But they're very easy to use, and it's an easy way to add extra protein and some extra omega-3 fatty acids to your diet. So what I'm doing today is a parfait with hemp seeds, mandarin oranges, yogurt, and some mini chocolate chips. So the idea is that you take something that you're maybe not familiar with and try to incorporate it in your diet in ways that you're familiar eating, so that it's not something totally new and different. So I've got some Greek yogurt. I've got 2 cups. This would make 4 parfaits. I'll probably only get about making 1. And then I've got 1/4 cup of hemp seeds, and they're really pretty, and they're very small. Just make sure you get the ones that are whole. If you don't get the ones that are whole, they're going to go right through you because your body can't penetrate the hole, and so it'll just pass on through. I've got an equal amount of mini chocolate chips. If you don't want to use commercial chocolate chips, you could, or you don't have them, or you can't find them, you can just chop up some chocolate into really small pieces. I'm just going to blend those together. And then I've got some small glasses. And I have peeled some mandarin oranges, some clementines, whatever type you have. You could use regular oranges as well. And I've tried to slice them fairly thinly, but one of the things I found was when they were nice and ripe, the slices would break apart, which, to be honest, is not a problem. In fact, maybe a little bit easier, because in that situation you have little orange sections that you can break apart, and those you can put in as well. So don't worry if they don't slice well. Just go ahead and use them, or do that intentionally. It's a little bit easier to spoon them out later on. So then I'm going to put into the cup, you can put 2 or 3 slices of orange. You get 1 orange per parfait. And then about 1/4 cup or so of the yogurt. And on top of that, I'm going to spoon those seeds and chocolate chips that I mixed together. And then a little bit of honey, just to sweeten it up, because Greek yogurt isn't going to have much sweetness to it. And so this you can use as much or as little as you like. If you decide it's got enough, because the chocolate chips will have a little bit of sweetness in them as well, and maybe you just don't like your yogurt really sweet, you can leave that one out. And then you're going to repeat the layers. So some more orange slices, some more yogurt, just like any old parfait. It's very simple to do. Makes a great breakfast. It's high in protein. The seeds themselves are a good source of protein. For every tablespoon, you'll have about 10 grams of protein in them. So it's an excellent source there. Get some more seeds. And then I'm going to add to this just a little bit of mint. Now this is totally optional. If you don't have mint, that's fine. But it adds just something a little bit special to it. And then I'm going to put a little bit more honey in there. And then you can top it off with either a mint sprig if you're using the mint, or another bit of orange. So I'm going to kind of see if my orange would, nope, it's just going to break on me. So put that little bit of orange in there, put it on a nice plate, and there you have it. Now, if you don't want to go about doing something like this, you can take those same seeds and sprinkle them on toast. You can sprinkle them on salad. Anytime you would use any other kind of seed, like a sunflower seed on the salad, you could use these instead. Another nice thing to do with them is to toast them a little bit. That brings out a lot of flavor with them. And they also work as a replacement for breadcrumbs. If you're doing chicken, a coating on chicken, or you're doing a coating on fish, you can use these seeds where you would use breadcrumbs instead. I hope you'll give it a try. It's something a little bit different, and it's easy to incorporate into your diet. You don't have to start in a real dramatic way, but they can add a lot of nutrition as well, and some nice flavor. I hope you'll try it. It's hemp seeds, mandarin orange, and yogurt parfaits. For Oklahoma Gardening, I'm Barbara Brown.
There are lots of great horticultural events this time of year. Be sure and consider these activities when you're making your plans for the weeks ahead. Next week, we'll be back outside with an all-new episode of Oklahoma Gardening. We'll prune the brambles to make room for summer cobblers, get our lawn ready for the season, and propagate Taylor junipers with a side veneer graft at Greenleaf Nursery in Park Hill, Oklahoma. Hope you can join us next week because it's that time of year for more TV you'll grow to love. To find out more information about show topics, as well as recipes, videos, articles, fact sheets, and other resources, including a directory of local extension offices, be sure and visit our website, oklahomagardening.okstate.edu. And we always have great information, answers to questions, photos, and gardening discussions on your favorite social media as well. Join in on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can find this entire show and other recent shows, as well as individual segments on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. And tune in to our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel to watch segments from previous hosts. Oklahoma Gardening is produced by the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University. The Botanic Garden at OSU is home to our studio gardens, and we encourage you to come visit this beautiful Stillwater jewel. We would like to thank our generous underwriter, the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry. Additional support is also provided by Pond Pro Shop, Greenleaf Nursery and the Garden Debut Plants, the Oklahoma Horticultural Society, and the Tulsa Garden Club.